My name is Alexandre Bergeron. I'm a senior software engineer at Domino Data Lab here in San Francisco. I'm responsible for developing many different features and services and backend features of the Domino platform, which allows data scientists to build, train, and productionize their models and keep track of all of their operations and all of their work and their everyday jobs. Some of the key issues that we have, writing a platform that allows people to run models, which means arbitrary code written in Python and R in productions, means that making sure that these models running on these services don't interfere too much with each other, don't consume too much resources, don't send too much data to our logs, and ensuring that all of these different services and all of our platform remains responsive under load and under stress, and continues to behave well. Also, we're having a lot of issues trying to build our team and trying to develop our platform as we move forward. We're still moving from a mostly monolithic application to something that is more service-oriented while remaining deployable to all of our customers. Yeah. So as an enterprise software, we're in an interesting situation where instead of having many thousands people using a deployment, it could be anywhere from 5 to 100, which means that our scalability issues mostly comes from the models themselves. We've often had some issues more recently with our logging infrastructure, and at the same time being in an enterprise space means that our issues with scalability will need to be deployable at multiple customers. So we do need to keep our solutions simple in our particular use case, which is kind of interesting. You see, at many of my different previous companies, we've often went for more complex, more fully featured softwares that would guarantee that we'd be able to scale up on one deployment. When you need to deploy that at multiple customers, and some of them will never need to scale up, it becomes a lot more interesting, and you become a lot more interested in having some simple solutions that will still allow you to scale to your current problems. Well, particular to my work at Domino Data Lab and also what I'm seeing at many different companies, there's a tendency to go with really complex solutions that are meant to scale at huge levels, that are meant for companies like Google, Twitter, LinkedIn, where they needed to scale to millions, if not billions of users. I tend to be more pragmatic and realistic, and I often feel that there's a lot of companies that invested a lot of time building some complicated infrastructure that actually is not really the best fit for the level of scalability that their product is focused on, which ultimately leads to having an increased load and on the engineers being on call. And there's definitely an interesting issue that might arise where it can become hard to get some engineers that are really specialized in these scalability issues, because they tend to be really in demand and really focus on the complex infrastructures that they're bringing and on making them as efficient and as performant as they can be. I've definitely benefited a lot from functional programming. To be honest, functional programming has been an interest of mine as I was still through my programmer's class, I fell on an Haskell tutorial trying to understand functional programming and monads, and not really being great at it. I definitely got back into functional programming when I started doing Scala about around 5 years ago. It definitely felt like it allowed me to write some simple, some clean code that was declarative and not imperative, that was a lot simpler to debug and analyze. Yeah, you could argue that you don't really know at runtime, if you're using the Scala collections library, what instance you are running, and it can become somewhat hard to reason about the performance of your operations. But ultimately, the code that you're written, instead of having something that is very complex, very long, and overthought a lot about which data structure you use, you just transform your data to hit a point to achieve the result that you want, which ultimately, in my previous lives as data engineers and as backend engineer, has been really practical at getting code quickly, and then you can optimize this later on if you need. I've definitely enjoyed a lot seeing lots of great technical talk about some of the leaders of the Scala community, about some libraries that are really popular. I'm thinking about the FS2 talk yesterday. There's been a lot of great tutorials on type classes, on monads, on applicatives, and it's just been a great conference and a great occasion to see what's happening in the community at large right these days.